Okay. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Briscoe. I'm with the Columbia Medical Recruiting Station.
I'm Colonel Warren Stewart. I'm the commander of Moncrief Army Health Clinic here at Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
And today we're here just to educate you all, let you all know about the different opportunities that the Army has as a nurse here in the Army. So I'll let you take it away. Please tell us about yourself. Let us know how long have you been in service?
Sure. So I'll just kind of get. I've actually been in the Army for 36 years. I originally entered the Army as an infantryman back in 1987, but after a while decided to get out, go back to college, and decided to become a nurse. So I've been a Army nurse since 1998. I got commissioned out of University of Kansas, ROTC, and then went on to get my master's degree that the Army paid for at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. I got my master's as an acute care nurse practitioner and a critical care nurse specialist, really focusing on trauma and critical care. And then went back to Duke and got my doctorate. So the Army's had me great opportunities for education and growth. My career is actually, I would say, fairly unique for a nurse. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm the commander. I command a large clinic here at Fort Jackson. So that would be an equivalent of a CEO or a director of a civilian organization as well. I have a budget of over $100 million a year, hundreds of employees. And so as a nurse, it's great the opportunity to lead and really impact healthcare. So that's sort of my educational background. But in addition to my nursing education, the Army has actually sent me for a year to the Rand Corporation in Santa Monica, California, to do a research year. So I was a research fellow for the Army for a year in Santa Monica. I got the year to hang out and do any research I wanted to do. So the research was any topic. And if you know what the Rand Corporation is, it's part of it works, it contracts with the Army. But I could do research in any realm, and it's all public policy research. So I had the opportunity to do that, which was awesome. And then most recently, they sent me to Harvard for a year to the Kennedy School. And I've spent a year really immersing myself in national security. Wrote a paper there that really outlined the challenges of blast-related traumatic brain injury with Special Operations Forces, which ended up being the sixth most read paper from the Belfer Center that year. But the Army sent me there. I didn't have to pay a dime to do any of those opportunities. They gave me that opportunity. So the education opportunities within the Army are massive. Again, the Army, as you come in as a brand new nurse, if you already have a skill, you come in at that skill. So if you're already working as an ER nurse or an ICU nurse, OBGYN nurse, you stay in that. But if you don't or you want to change, we have opportunities where we have courses that range anywhere from 10 to 16 weeks where you specialize. I did ER nursing. I came right out of undergrad, so I was a brand new nurse when I joined. So they sent me to become an ER nurse, which is my passion. And my real passion is pre-hospital care and trauma. Multiple deployments, deployed in a brigade combat team in OIF 1. So that's when the war in Iraq first started. I spent a year there as the only nurse in a brigade combat team of about 6,000 soldiers. Went back to Iraq a few years later, ran an emergency department for the 28th Combat Support Hospital, and was also the chief flight nurse at the time for the 28th CASH for all of southern Iraq. And then returned the last time to Iraq and Kuwait to be the chief of clinical operations for the coalition that was there to fight ISIS. Great experience. What I loved about it is I got to go there as a captain, as a major, as a lieutenant colonel. And each time I was challenged in a different way. But each time the Army also reinvested in me before I went. And when I got back, it was a pretty awesome experience. They also gave me the chance to command a battalion. Matter of fact, the battalion that you're in, I used to be the commander of.
Yes.
And so that a great opportunity as a nurse. It's an unusual opportunity. And what I love about it is I've had the opportunity to really stay focused in nursing. I have not left my roots. I'm a nurse at heart. I'm a nurse for my passion. But the Army's given me the opportunity to do other things that typically you wouldn't expect in a typical nurse's career path. But what they're really good at is, okay, you've had opportunity to sort of be away from the bedside. It's time for you to go back. And so I've had the opportunity to maintain my clinical skill, which I think is extremely important. And, I'm a nurse at heart, and I don't want to do anything other than being a nurse.
So you mentioned that you've gone on a couple of deployments. We'll start there. How was it like? What is every day like when you were on that deployment? Did you get a chance to work in that clinical setting? A lot of people think that even though you're a clinician, that you're going to be out on the forefront. So can you please educate everybody of how
Sure.
that works for you?
Yeah, and there's what's great about it is there's opportunities, and all of us are driven for different reasons and want to do different sort of experiences. The great thing that I've had is I've had the opportunity to be a nurse at the very front lines, at the point of injury, providing that care. I've also been the nurse that ran an ER and provided that care in the emergency department. Extremely busy in Iraq, and then I was the third time again. I was far from the front lines and really looking across the entire Syria, Kuwait, Iraq, and all those areas, and seeing how best we can provide medical care, making sure the right person was at the right place with the right skill set in order to save lives. And so, day to day, though, typically you're not. I mean, it sort of depends on what deployment you're on, but you're sort of going to know before you get there. But you're hard pressed to find somebody that has deployed as a nurse. And I say this all the time. Nursing came from the battlefield. Florence Nightingale was a battlefield nurse. And so our profession comes from the battlefield, and there's no better place to be a nurse. And as a trauma nurse in particular, I could spend a little piece of my soul every time with a trauma here in the United States, which you do if you've worked around trauma. You don't, every one of those impacts you. But when you invest that in an American soldier or a coalition soldier that's giving all for their country, it's special. And so deployments are great. I would encourage, and most people want them, but they're fewer and fewer now. I would say, though, you're just as busy as ever. We're just coming out of COVID. Everyone knows that. The Army was instrumental in the response for the nation with COVID. If it wasn't for the Army and the Department of Defense's ability to mobilize and send nurses out into a lot of our civilian hospitals in larger cities, there would have been a lot more fatalities. And so it really was our ability to do both. Work within a garrison environment, which was most of the time we spent our time working in regular fixed facilities that look just like the hospitals that you work in. But also we get the opportunity to do kind of cool stuff in tents and in vehicles and helicopters as well. And so that's what I love about it. I would say the other thing I really love about Army medicine and military medicine in particular is I'm not constrained when it comes to what I want to prescribe, what I want to diagnose. If I have a patient that needs a certain medication, I'm confident that they're going to get that medication, that they can afford it because it's typically going to be free. As a matter of fact, I can't think of a scenario where it wouldn't be. And so if I need to get an MRI in this facility right here, I could get you an MRI within 24 hours for just a regular MRI. I mean, that's the access to the care that we have. And so that is not the typical experience from my talking to my peers in the civilian world, where they don't have to worry about, hey, can this patient, this is the right medicine, but they can't afford it, or this is the right procedure, but their insurance won't cover it. That's not a problem I have within military medicine. Now, we still are good stewards of government money, and we don't just haphazardly diagnose and sort of order anything we want. We try to be really good clinicians, but the good news is I can do that. I can prescribe something that I know they need and that they'll be able to afford.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So I'm going to shift a little bit. So we're going to talk about more so your personal goals, and what do you think, based off all your experience in the military, how do you think that's going to help you when you decide to get out of the military?
Yeah, so I'm sort of Maslow's hierarchy myself. I feel like I've self-actuated in the sense that I'm a commander of a hospital, right? Like, who would have thought brand new RN Stewart would have done that? But so I feel comfortable where I am, what the Army's given me. I've been in the Army for 36 years. I retired from here, hopefully to get another, when I leave here, hopefully get another command. But ultimately, I want to teach.
Oh, wow.
I want to teach at the university level, nursing, obviously. I love teaching. That's really is my passion. And I think that's how I can give back to the nursing profession, obviously to our nation, and doing something that I really love is teaching. So that's my plan, but it set me up for that. But I'll tell you, I have a lot of friends that have gone on to be managers of large nursing organizations, of being CEOs and CNOs of hospitals. You're prepared extremely well. Again, just to come in, you have to have a bachelor's degree. And then his expectation is you get a master's, or the Army now sends you for your doctorate. When I got my master's through the Army, the doctorate, the DNP really wasn't a thing, so they didn't pay for it. But if I was to go to school now, they would send me straight for my doctorate. So we're one of the, probably, if we're not the most educated force of nurses, and that's across the DoD in the world. I don't know who would have more education than a typical military nurse.
Okay. And to all of the students that are, I mean, they have all of these questions, they're motivated, but they just want to know, like, I just want some type of advice. What kind of advice would you give them
As far as for the military or just in general?
continuing through nursing school and in the military?
Yeah, so I was just say this: nursing school is hard. If you're in it, you know it. If you're not, and you're going to get in it, just want to let you know it's probably one of the hardest bachelor's degrees to get. I think that's because nursing is a perfect combination of people skills and science, and you have to be good at both. And those nurses that really work on their emotional intelligence and can understand how to interact, know themselves, but know how to interact with others, but also know the science that's required to be a nurse. Spend time doing that. The things that you learn in nursing school, you're going to use again. And that's the part I think that's intimidating, but it's awesome. And then getting through it, take challenges. I think the reason I'm where I am is every time the Army says, "Hey, where do you want to go?" And I'd say I'd want to go to Germany or I'd want to go to wherever, and they'd say, "Hey, you can have that, but we'd rather you take this other job." It's always a job that was very scary, something I hadn't thought about. I always took that job because I wanted the challenge, and I think that's what grew me to the point now that I'm able to command a hospital and have the experiences I had. If I would have taken the easy route, I'd still been fine. I'd still be probably a colonel. I'd still be getting paid really good money, but I wouldn't have had the growth that I've had and opportunities that I had. So I would just say, take the hard challenges, regardless if you come in the Army or not, regardless of whatever you do. Push yourself every day to be a better nurse and a better person.
Okay. I think that's about it. I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. You guys have heard it from Colonel Stewart himself. Okay. And thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks.